I don't want to talk about it. A fragile melody, a haunting plea, a whisper of sorrow that would echo far beyond its origin. Today we unravel the story behind this beloved song, written by Danny Whitten, performed by Crazy Horse, and forever immortalized by Rod Stewart. It's a story woven with tenderness, tragedy, and timeless resonance. A story of how a single aching song can outlive the man who wrote it and speak for countless others who couldn't find the words. Danny Ray Whitten was born in 1943 in Columbus, Georgia. Life wasn't easy. His parents separated early, and he and his sister were raised by their single mother. Like many musicians of the era, Danny turned to music not for fame, but for salvation. It was his escape, his identity, and eventually his voice. In the 1960s, he formed a doo-wop group called Danny and the Memories. That group evolved into a raw rock band known as the Rockets, and then fate intervened. Neil Young, already a rising star, saw potential in Whitten and his bandmates. In 1968, Young brought them into his orbit, renaming them Crazy Horse. They became his backing band and contributed to his breakthrough album, Everybody Knows This Is Nowhere, delivering searing performances on classics like Cinnamon Girl, Cowgirl in the Sand, and Down by the River. But Danny Whitten wasn't just the guitarist in Crazy Horse. He was its soul. His fragile vocals, gentle spirit, and poignant lyrics gave the band its emotional depth. And in 1971, when Crazy Horse released their self-titled debut album without Neil Young, it was Danny's song, I Don't Want to Talk About It, that stood out like a quiet, aching heartbeat among louder rock tracks. That song didn't scream for attention. It whispered, and in that whisper was the weight of grief, longing, and surrender. By the early 1970s, Danny was in pain, both physically and emotionally. He had developed severe rheumatoid arthritis, and to manage the chronic pain, he began using heroin. Addiction crept in silently, as it often does, and before long, it consumed him. Yet somehow, amidst the chaos of his life, he managed to write a song that cut through the noise. I Don't Want to Talk About It is a love song, but not the Hollywood kind. It's not about sweeping gestures or fairy tale endings. It's about silence, about grief, about the fear of vulnerability. It's the kind of song you write when you're too tired to pretend anymore. During the Crazy Horse sessions, guitarist Niels Lofgren, who would later join Bruce Springsteen's E Street Band, helped Danny complete the second verse. Lofgren never took credit. He just wanted to help his friend get through it. That's the kind of camaraderie that surrounded Danny Whitten in those days. People who saw the light in him, even when he couldn't. Lofgren recalls in the book 1,000 UK #1 hits by John Cutner and Spencer Lee. Danny was a very soulful man and a good man, and he was the one who got me into Crazy Horse. I loved his song, I Don't Want to Talk About It, and I think it's one of the greatest ballads ever. It has a very haunting lyric. I put 2 lines into the song because Danny was so ill when he recorded it. He could still sing and play, but he wasn't bothered with much else. We said, Danny, we've got to do this song. It's a great song. And he said, it needs a second verse. This went on for months. He never could get it together. And then one day we were in the studio and got into an argument. He said, okay, well, one of you write it. I left the studio, wrote a couple of lines quickly, and came back. I said, what about these? And he said, fine, let's do it. Danny and I sat opposite each other with acoustic guitars, and Ry Cooder was playing slide on his lap. It came out beautifully. But addiction has no mercy. By 1972, Whitten was spiraling. When Neil Young invited him to play rhythm guitar on the Harvest Tour, he hoped it might be the lifeline Danny needed. But it wasn't. Danny showed up unable to play, his body and mind dulled by heroin and prescription drugs. With a heavy heart, Neil had to let him go. He gave Danny $50 and a plane ticket back to Los Angeles. That night, Danny Whitten died. He was just 29 years old. The official cause was an overdose of Valium mixed with alcohol. But in truth, it was a broken spirit. Neil Young was devastated. He blamed himself. He poured that grief into music. The needle and the damage done was about Danny. Tonight's the Night, one of Young's darkest and most emotionally raw albums, was a eulogy not only for Whitten, but also for roadie Bruce Berry, who died of a heroin overdose shortly after. Danny's ghost lingered in those songs, in Neil's voice, in the silence between the chords. But the story of I Don't Want to Talk About It didn't end with Crazy Horse. In 1975, British rocker Rod Stewart came across the track and was immediately struck by its vulnerability. He recorded it in Muscle Shoals, Alabama for his album Atlantic Crossing. Rod's version was silkier, smoother, less raw than Danny's, but just as affecting. Initially, Stewart's rendition of the song was simply an album track, quietly nestled among others. But after the album's release, both he and his label began to notice something remarkable. Audiences were gravitating toward it. At concerts, it became a moment of collective stillness, a chance for thousands of voices to connect through shared sorrow and longing. Recognizing its emotional pull, they decided to release it as a single in 1977, pairing it as a double A-side with The First Cut is the Deepest. This was despite the fact that Stewart had already moved on to a new album, A Night on the Town. Still, the song's growing popularity made it impossible to ignore. It reached #1 on the UK charts in 1977 as a double A-side with The First Cut is the Deepest. It was a strategic move, meant to keep the Sex Pistols' God Save the Queen from topping the charts. But it had an unintended consequence. It introduced Whitten's song to a global audience. In 1989, Stewart re-recorded it for his Storyteller anthology, and in 2004, he performed it live at the Royal Albert Hall with then-unknown Scottish street performer Amy Bell. That performance, raw, beautiful, and emotionally electric, went viral long before viral was a thing. Today, it has over 1 billion views on YouTube and has become one of Stewart's most beloved performances. Other artists followed. Everything But the Girl released a soft, melancholic version in 1988 that reached the UK top 3. Rita Coolidge, Niels Lofgren, even Bonnie Raitt covered it. Yet no matter who sings it, that original melancholy never fades. That plea, I don't want to talk about it, carries the weight of all the things we carry quietly, the heartbreaks we don't share, the emotions we swallow, the words we can't say. What makes this song so powerful is not just its melody or even its lyrics, it's the story behind it. A young man, brilliant, broken, wrote his pain into a song that outlived him. Danny Whitten never knew the song would become famous. He never saw the stadiums, the standing ovations, the millions of tears shed to the sound of his voice. He never knew he would touch people across decades, across continents. And maybe that's why the song still resonates, because it wasn't written for fame. It was written because he had to, because the pain had nowhere else to go, because sometimes the only way to say something is to not say it at all. So the next time you hear that first soft strum, the quiet plea in the chorus, remember Danny Whitten. Not as a cautionary tale, but as a reminder that even in our darkest moments, we can create something beautiful, something lasting, something that speaks when we cannot. I Don't Want to Talk About It is more than a song. It's a heartbeat, frozen in time, a love letter never sent, a farewell whispered into the void. And in that silence, we listen.